Hello Algebra 1 students, welcome to section 8-6, solving quadratic equations by factoring. In the previous section 8-5 you learned how to solve the quadratic equations by graphing, and you learned that there are three different scenarios of the solutions. The first scenario is two solutions, the second scenario is one solution, and the third scenario is no solutions. Today you're going to learn how to solve the quadratic equations algebraically by factoring. And before we start this, let's learn about very important property. Is called the zero product property. Simply, if a times b is equal to 0, there are two possibilities: either a equals 0 or b equals 0. This is what we call the zero product property, and we use this property to solve the quadratic equations. Guys, consider x minus 7 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. The product of these two binomial is equal to 0. If you apply the zero product property, you split your page into two parts and you equal the first binomial to 0 and the second binomial, this is the other possibility, x plus 2 is equal to 0, and you solve these two linear equations separately. To isolate the x in this equation, you undo negative 7 by adding its opposite plus 7. Now you cross out this negative 7 and the plus 7, and x is equal to 0 plus 7 is 7. To undo the plus 2, you minus 2 from both sides. X equals negative 2. You can check your solution all the time. If you plug 7 or negative 2 in the original equation, you will end with a true statement. Let's try 7 for example. If you put 7 minus 7, it's 0, and 7 plus 2 is 9. 0 times 9 is equal to 0. Yes, it's a true statement. Also, if you try negative 2, it gives you a true statement. Another example: the product of x minus 2 times x is equal to 0. The zero product property says either x minus 2 is equal to 0 or x equals 0. When you solve x minus 2 equal to 0, it gives us x equals 2. And x equals 0 is already solved, so nothing to be done. So solutions here are 2 and 0. Solutions in the first part is 7 and negative 2. Solving quadratic equation by factoring. Guys, factoring is a great method of solving quadratic equations, but it has some conditions. You need to be aware of the conditions at the beginning. Condition number 1: make sure the quadratic trinomial is written in the standard form. Standard form, it means the expression is written in descending order of the power of x. So you start with x with the highest power, power 2, later power 1, and finally the constant which considered power 0, x to the power 0. Condition number 2, everything has to equal to 0. Condition number 3, if there is any common factor, you need to factor out this common factor before you start factoring the trinomial. Now guys, let's get started. In part A, we have a quadratic trinomial. It's written in the standard form and is equal to 0, and there is no common factor, so we can start factoring this. You know guys how to factor quadratic trinomial. You create two binomials. It's always the product of two binomials. You set the signs at first. If the last sign is positive, the two signals are going to be similar like the middle one. The middle one is negative, so it's negative and negative. X squared is going to be x times x. There are two scenarios to factor 8, either 8 times 1 or 2 times 4. I need the sum of the two factors to equal the middle term 6, so I'm going to choose 4 times 2. Guys, you can always check the outer and the inner. Outer, they give us negative 2x, and the product of the inner terms, they give us negative 4x. If you add this, negative 2x and the negative 4x, they add negative 6x. My middle term is negative 6x, so factoring is great. Step number 2, you apply the zero product property. Either x minus 4 is equal to 0 or x minus 2 is equal to 0. If you solve both linear equations, you end with x equals 4 or x equals 2. So guys, there are two solutions of this equation. So solutions are 4 and 2. Guys, if you visualize this situation, if you're solving this quadratic trinomial by graphing, you would see a upward parabola, and this parabola intersects x-axis at 2 points at x equals 2 and at x equals 4. But we're not solving by graphing. I'm just trying to make connection between solving quadratic equation by graphing and solving quadratic equation by factoring. Another example. This equation, guys, is not written in the standard form. To be written in the standard form, you need to equal this equation to 0. In order to get 0 on the left hand side, you need to minus 20x and minus 50 from both sides. So I'm going to minus 20x and minus 50 from that side, and to do the same right here, minus 20x and minus 50. Whatever you do for one side, you have to do the same for the opposite side. What is the benefit of that, guys? 20x and its opposite cross out each other, 50 and its opposite cross out each other. So on the right hand side there is 0. This is what I need. Now when you write the quadratic trinomial, you make sure you write the quadratic trinomial in descending order from the highest power of x to the least power of x. So it's going to be negative 2x squared minus 20x minus 50. Step number 3, guys, make sure this quadratic trinomial doesn't have any greatest common factor. Actually, it has a greatest common factor. All terms are divisible by negative 2, so you should factor out this negative 2 before you start factoring. We get whatever inside by dividing every term by the GCF negative 2. Negative 2x squared divided by negative 2, it's going to be x squared. Negative 20x divided by negative 2, it's going to be plus 10x. And finally, negative 50 divided by negative 2, it's going to be plus 25. Guys, this trinomial is a perfect square trinomial, but if you don't know how to identify whether it's a perfect square or not, you can factor normally. So you keep the negative 2 outside and you draw the product of the two binomials. If the last signal positive, the two signals gonna be like the middle one, similar. X squared gonna be x times x, and the 25 factored 5 times 5. If you try the outer and the inner, they give us 10x. So factoring is great. Guys, don't pay attention to this negative 2 outside. This is not part of the solution because it's a constant. The solution comes from the binomials. So either x plus 5 is equal to 0 or the other x plus 5 equal to 0. Guys, they are the same, so no need to repeat the same thing. So when you solve this equation, it gives us x equals negative 5. So there is only one solution of this quadratic equation. So solution is negative 5. And again, guys, if you visualize this situation, it's upside down parabola because the coefficient of x squared is negative. So it's upside down parabola this way. And it touches x-axis at negative 5 this way, guys. It touches the x-axis at negative 5. This is why this quadratic equation has one solution. Another quadratic equation, x squared plus 4x equals 21. It is not written in the standard form. Standard form, everything has to equal 0. So let me minus 21 from both sides. Now x squared plus 4x minus 21 is equal to 0. There is no common factor. So let me start factoring this. The last signal is negative, so the signals are different. X squared gonna be x times x. Two methods to factor 21. 21 times 1 or 7 times 3. I need the difference this time. I need the difference between the two factors to be 4. So I'm going to choose 7 times 3. Guys, if you check the outer, they're going to be negative 3x. And the product of the inner term is going to be plus 7x. The sum of negative 3x and the plus 7x is going to be plus 4x. This is exactly the middle term, so factoring is great. Now you split your page and you apply the zero product property. Either the binomial x plus 7 is equal to 0 or the binomial x minus 3 is equal to 0. If you solve this one, x gonna be negative 7, and if you solve the other one, x gonna be 3. So guys, there are two solutions this time. So solutions are negative 7 and 3. Solutions are negative 7 and 3. Guys, don't write your solution in the form of ordered pair because they are two different solutions in two different places. One last example, x squared minus 6x plus 9 is equal to 0. This quadratic equation is written in the standard form, is equal to 0. There is no common factor, so everything is great. And guys, if you notice, it's a perfect square trinomial, so you can factor directly. A binomial to the power 2 is equal to 0. Guys, one factor of the first is x, one factor of 9 is 3, and the negative sign in the middle. So it's going to be x minus 3 times itself. So no need to split your page into two parts because it's the same factor multiplied by itself. You can take it one time. X minus 3 is equal to 0. If you solve this, it gives us x equals 3. So there is only one solution of this equation. Solution is 3. Solution is 3 of that equation. Finally, guys, let's finish this section with a real life application word problem. Guys, parabolas are around us in real life. Take this problem. It says the height in feet of a diver above the water can be modeled by this quadratic equation, where t is the time in seconds after the diver jumps off a platform. Find the time. So guys, our job is to find the time it takes for the diver to reach the surface of the water. Guys, consider there is a diver standing on a platform like this, and this is the surface of the water, and this diver is jumping into the water this way. Guys, it's part of upside down parabola, so even the diver jump into the water is considered parabola. So parabolas are around us. How do I find the time it takes this diver to reach the surface of the water? Guys, remember guys, at the level of the water, the height is considered 0. The height is considered 0 at the surface of the water. So I'm going to take this equation and set this equation is equal to 0 and to solve this equation by factoring. So negative 16t squared plus 8t plus 48 is equal to 0 because at the surface of the water h equals 0. Guys, there is a common factor in this equation. There is negative 8. Take negative 8 outside and divide every term by negative 8. It gives us 2t squared minus t minus 6. You can always check your solution by doing the inverse operation. You can distribute this multiplied by the first, by the second, by the third. You will get the original expression. Guys, don't pay attention to the negative 8. It's a constant outside, and start factoring this quadratic trinomial and set everything is equal to 0. This is 0, not 6. So guys, the last signal is negative, so signal is going to be different, 1 plus and 1 minus. 2t squared can be factored 2t times t. Two scenarios to factor 6, either 6 times 1 or 3 times 2. Let me try 3 times 2 and check if my factoring is okay. It's fine. If not okay, I'm gonna change. Guys, outer terms, they give us negative 4t. The inner terms, they give us plus 3t. plus 3t. The sum of negative 4t and the plus 3t is going to be negative 1t, and my middle term is negative 1t. Now guys, you split your page into two parts. You equal the first factor 2t plus 3 to 0, or the other binomial t minus 2 is equal to 0. To solve this linear equation, you need to undo plus 3 by adding its opposite first. Now plus 3 and minus 3, they cancel out each other. 2t is equal to 0 minus 3 is going to be minus 3. You divide both sides by 2, guys. It gives us t equals t, the time, guys, remember, t equals negative 3 over t. It means negative 1.5 seconds. Guys, is it possible to have negative time? Time cannot be negative. So guys, you have to reject this solution and consider the other solution. If t minus 2 equals 0, it means t equals 2 seconds. Yeah, it's a reasonable solution, but the first one is not reasonable solution. So guys, my answer, it takes 2 seconds for the diver to reach the surface of the water. Guys, practice very well and see you in the next lesson. Bye.